Let's talk about poetry. Welcome back. Today I want to talk about how to become a better poet and finding your unique voice, which are inextricably linked, so let's get going. I'm currently in my wife and I's RV with my wife behind the camera, Rachel, and we are in Shaver Lake, California. We've had some delicious meals that I've cooked out on the open fire in our big cast iron pan, and we had burgers with cheese, classic, and within ciabatta bread. And I also made an egg, though because I was cooking it using our big cast iron straight on the fire, it was a little bit off centre, so when I was cooking the eggs at the end of the burger making process, they kind of slid down to the bottom of the pan. Now this was okay for Rachel's egg, which came out really nice and like a beautiful golden golden yolk, and mine was just kind of
This is so much detail for a burger.
I like the detail because you get the tongue salivating, you know. I'm a poet, I will describe things. Thank you, Rachel. So I was thinking about how a poet can find their unique voice or voices in poetry that they write, and how this can help us become better poets. I think to start, probably the simplest bit of advice you can ever have to improve your poetry is to write. It's all well and good wanting to be a poet or operate as a poet or write a poem, but you actually have to just start. Now this can be either a theme that you decide that you want to write on, or a specific topic you want to write about, or a specific person's perspective you want to write a poem about, or it can be the stream of consciousness, which I've mentioned quite frequently, where you just write without thinking. But yeah, the first thing you need to do is just write, and completely within that is also the need to read far and wide, read poets from the contemporary scene, read poets from the past, find what it is that you like in poetry. Do you connect to people that write more lyric, personal, emotional poetry, or do you find that you connect to more narrative poetry? Do you like poems that have a mythological bend? Do you like ones that prioritise sound and rhythm, or image and metaphor, or plain speaking versus formal writing? That will be discovered the more that you read, and obviously you can enjoy things from lots of different areas. You don't have to stick to one thing. When you've written a poem, one of the most important things to do is to edit the poem. Now, your first draft is most likely not going to be the final draft. You might occasionally luck out, write a poem and be like, wow, that is absolutely perfect. And you might think that over time, because sometimes, and I can feel this, you write a first draft and you can feel like you've got the energy, you've got the trance state, you feel like everything you're writing is really profound and it's said exactly how you think. Then you come to it the next day and you're like, yeah, maybe this needs some work. And it's really important to then start to edit the poem to see which bits work and which don't, cut out what doesn't, expand on what's interesting, refine the metaphors, make sure that they are as maximally impactful as possible. And you might edit something 5, 6, 10, 20, 50 times. You might even rewrite while you're doing that. But the key is to take the original feeling and reason for the writing and to edit it for clarity and maximum emotional impact. If you over edit, you might lose the original reason for the poem itself and it can trail off. And if you under edit, it might seem like it's not quite there yet. And speaking of metaphors, like one of the ways in which you can start becoming stronger as a poet is to create more metaphors. I think it was Aristotle that said that the most important aspect of poetry are metaphors. which brings about the question, what makes a good metaphor? Now, I have a kind of theory about this, and I've been helped by Gregory Orr's book, A Primer for Poets and Readers of Poetry, a great book which I recommend to anyone starting at the beginner level all the way up to the expert level. There'll be a link in the comments to that book. I think of a metaphor like on a spectrum, and you can have things that are too similar on this end of the spectrum. So if you say oranges are apples, which, yeah, they are kind of similar, they're both fruit, because they're both fruit, they have seeds, they grow on trees, and all the rest, but it's not really exciting to the imagination. And now you can get over to this end of the spectrum and you can find things that are completely different. You could say oranges are like mountains. Now, to me, it might be different for you, but that doesn't give me anything imaginatively, really. It kind of sounds strange, and in my head I see an orange just like sitting on the peak of the mountain, whereas a metaphor should be blending the concepts. So if you take that here, so I think there's a zone of optimal metaphor making, which is right on the edge of strangeness, but not too far that it's so dissimilar. So a metaphor is like you're bringing what is dissimilar into almost a similarity. So if I think of an example, I'm going to use an example from a poem I wrote because it's all I can think about, but at a mechanics, when they rise the car up so that they can work underneath it, I refer to it as horses on hind legs. Now obviously the car isn't literally a horse on a hind leg, and obviously the car is floating, but to me I can see the standing up of the horse, and to me, again, you might disagree with this, you can think what you like about the metaphor, but to me that like sat in the right place there. It felt like, okay, this works. So to tie this in, look at things and make metaphors out of them, even if you're not writing a full poem at the time. So I'm looking at one, the bark of a tree. You can say that the bark of the tree is a moon, the bark of the tree is my lover, the bark of the tree is my leg bone, whatever, and you can just keep saying, this is this, and you'll find some that might go, oh, that's good, the bark of the tree is octopus skin, the bark of the tree is elephant skin, you're like, oh, there is a parallel there. And some of that parallel, it's not always obvious, but you can be like, it's similar because it shares something sensory, something tactile, some sort of smell, some sort of conceptual similarity, some sort of sound similarity, as in like words can be similar. So yes, one of the things you could do is start creating metaphors, novel. And to stick with the editing, it's read your poem out loud. Notice where, when you're reading your poem, maybe the rhythm falls off, maybe the image doesn't sound refreshing, maybe you go a bit quieter when you're trying to read it, you feel a little bit sheepish, and a lot of the time you might be thinking, oh, I'm not saying what I actually mean. That might need work there, and some of that's just self-awareness as to when you're reading, and that can happen in live reading settings too, as you come and bring it to people and read in front of people. I've had it where I'll read and then I'm like, I'll stumble during the reading a bit and I'm like, that doesn't quite work, and I'll change it for a later date, which is fine. I think one of the other things you need to do is ask for feedback from others. Now, this is extremely helpful if you ask from poets who already are either established or are very good writers themselves, are very good teachers themselves, but you can also ask, anyone for feedback on the poem, because they're going to have an experience from it and they might have questions and they might have something to give you, so it doesn't necessarily have to come from a poet that's established or professional or whatever else you want to say. But when you're getting feedback, there's two things. One, you need to have your ego disarmed. You don't want to just argue the point of why you did everything with the person that's giving you feedback. You listen to feedback and decide what does and what doesn't work for you. Even if it stings at the time, wait for the sting to finish to see what might actually benefit the poem. The way that you want to think about it is the feedback, if done, well, in the right manner, like the interest should be that we want to make this poem better. The person giving feedback and the person receiving feedback can join hand in hand, like, I want to make this poem stronger. So as long as the intention is right, it's important to listen to that. But Everyone giving you feedback has their own aesthetic sensibilities, has their own wants from poetry, has their own voice in their own poetry. So it's important to see what works for you and what doesn't. So you can push back on feedback. You don't have to accept it, but make sure it's genuinely considered feedback, not just everything that someone says, oh no, but I meant this, no, but it's this, no, and then no one's having a good time. The ego's too strong. Now, to put this in the context of voice and how to find your voice in poetry, one thing I'd say, when you're reading other poets, notice what is happening in each individual poem with voice. For example, are the sentences long or short in the poem? If they're short, what's the effect that that's making? Are they choppy? Is there a reason for that? Is the speaker unsure or nervous? Are they long and flowing? That can give a sense of kind of continuity, maybe beauty in that kind of longer, more verbose way of speaking. Is the voice formal or informal? So, for example, if the voice in the poem feels formal, what effect does that have? Formal can often be disconnecting from something or more distant from something if you describe something more formally. Like if you asked me, how do you feel about the run you went on this morning? And I said, one felt rather invigorated by the rolling hills, and I feel like that's going quite formally, and you might not really connect to that. But I could go really casual and be like, yeah, that was bloody great run, yeah, really cool. You might be too informal, or you might connect to that more. In your poem, you have to decide, again, are you going to be on the extreme ends of the spectrum, or are you going to be somewhere in the middle? Another thing about voice is the rhythm. Is the rhythm rolling, tumbling down a hill? Is it going in a certain way? Is it consistent? Or, like with the sentence lengths, is the rhythm choppy? Like, do you have lots of line breaks that create like the sense of like you get in here and go, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start? Or is it galloping along for a long time? A few other things is like, what's the images? Let's say you have a speaker. So the speaker of the poem, let's just say, is a 50-year-old man from Texas. How different is he going to speak than a 25-year-old female from Los Angeles? What are they more likely to talk about? What cadence are they going to speak in? What things are they more likely to notice in their environment? That's something that's important to consider when you're thinking about voice in poetry, but also in fiction or anything else. The voice is who is speaking in the poem, or if there's multiple speakers, so who are speaking in the poem. That's something that you need to decide. It can be the I, like the lyric I, the poet, even though it's a personification to some degree of the poet. It's like, is it you personally? Is it someone else? What should that voice sound like? Like, let's say you're describing something emotional to someone without the poem. Let's just say you applied for something and you didn't get it. When you're talking to someone, you're not going to be like, I applied for this thing and I just didn't get it. Like, that doesn't fit. And if your poem kind of speaks like that about that sort of event, it wouldn't work. You might say, I applied for something and I'm really disappointed that I didn't get it. That feels more in line with the voice of how to transmit that message. So when you're writing a poem, if you know what the predominant emotion is, you can allow voice to sit within that. So what can you do when you're writing a poem? You can ask yourself, you don't have to think about it straight away. You can look at the poem that you've already written in draft form and be like, what is the voice or the voices in this poem? What is the predominant emotional tone? How can I stay consistent within the emotional tone with things like sentence length and rhythm and images and subject matter and all the rest? And I will say, kind of in a more concluding sense, that your voice over time will become more unique, and I want to warn against, which tends to be an attitude from poets that are earlier on in their journey, and something that I used to also feel and was rightly corrected on when I was younger. reading other poets won't affect your also unique voice in the sense that it's going to dismantle it and ruin all the uniqueness you have. The more you read, the more you can integrate all the different voices, allow it to synthesize in you and express something better and more true to yourself. Ironically, it's like saying, if you were a filmmaker, I'm not going to watch any other film because I don't want that film to influence me. Influence is a good thing. We are influenced by things around us all the time. All the ideas we have, the cultural sensibilities we have, the language we speak, so much stuff is inherited. So the question is, where do you want to inherit these things from? How aware can you be of what it is that you inherit? Because you can either hold all these ideas that you've never actually thought about much yourself that have been passed to you and you just unquestioningly hold them to be true without actually thinking more about it. So when you're reading far and wide, find what things best suit you and what you can integrate into your voice and learn from great poets. So hopefully this video has given you some insight into ways that you can develop yourself into a stronger poet, and also how to find your unique voice within poetry. Now, I want to know what you think about the things that I was saying. Do you feel like you found a unique voice or voices? How do you feel about how, when you read other poets, that they influence you, and whether you think that's good or bad? I'd love to hear your answers to these questions in the comments below, and I'd love to continue this discussion. Lastly, thank you so much for watching this, by the way, and there are a few small things you can do that can really help me and this channel grow so that we can bring poetry and poetry craft and all the rest to more people, which is one of my life tasks, because I believe that poetry is absolutely an art of healing and understanding and bringing us together. So if you could click the like button, leave a comment, press subscribe, share this with your friends who are either poets, poetry enthusiasts, or poetry curious, and get them on board. If you're looking to become a stronger poet, and if you want to be up to date on online and offline events, articles on poets, poems and poetry, and other good stuff pertaining to the art of poetry, sign up for my mailing list. It's in the link below at my website at www.nathanhassall.com/sign up. I really hope to see you there and joining the hundreds of other poets that already are on the mailing list. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon for the next one. Or 10, or 50, or 100, or 1,000,000. Maybe I'll... No, I don't need to go there. Well, I need a wee.